Curiosity. Curiosity is the new superpower. We're going to learn a lot about it this year. It is a benefit in so many different areas, and I love so much today. The one power, seeing that beauty all around us, Bob just talked about. Curiosity is one very powerful tool to open up into that. It's through curiosity that we get to see and witness heaven on earth. So thank you very much for the introduction. I love being here. The idea, this wonder everywhere. Looking around at this world, talking about so much. When Neil talked about the snow outside, Bob talking about this idea of love opening us up to so much more. It's amazing that we're not just all walking around out in the world with our jaws just dropped, bumping into one another. If we were remembered how amazing everything is around us, but it's our everyday experience. We see it all the time. And so we kind of tend to forget how amazing everything is. I'm thinking, of nature, using curiosity to look at nature. One of my favorite things to watch is time-lapse videos where they'll show like grass growing. And it's magical when you watch and see something grow that rapidly. NASA has a really cool animation that shows the polar ice caps, and it shows how year after year they expand during winter on one pole while it's decreasing on the other. And it's when you watch this time lapse over many years, it's exactly like the human breath. There is so much awe just everywhere. Imagining the stars, imagining like if they only came out once a year, how mind-boggling and just like amazing it would be to step out and just see this thing. But we get this every single day. And so we kind of lose like that magic that it is unless we remember and lean into curiosity as our superpower. There's a quote, this is from Ernest Holmes in Ideas for Living. He says, when a person stands in awe of grandeur, something deep within them responds. Something within them embraces the ocean. Something within them melts into the mountain, and they become one with it. When a person stands in awe of grandeur. So this is our reminder that we are in an amazing, amazing place, an amazing world. And to take time to, as they say, stop and smell the roses. One thing that I would find very interesting and it's just amazing, and it's such a gradual process that has gotten us to where we are here in this technology. When I was little, we had to talk on the phone, and when you're starting like your early teens and you could talk on the phone with a friend for an hour, 2 hours, and lose yourself in that human connection, which is so important to us all. My grandma told me, someday you're going to be able to talk on the phone and see that person's face at the same time. And my mind was blown. Like, I couldn't believe it. Really? You think that'll happen in my lifetime? And not only did that happen, and we could carry it around in our pocket, not attached to the wall anymore. Here we are on Zoom. And we could have hundreds of people all waving at each other at the exact same time. And how amazing. I love seeing, oh yeah, thank you. It's mind-boggling, but we get so used to it. It's just such a gradual thing. And so leaning into curiosity to remind us. A couple months ago, I talked about the mindful eating experience, and it was the mindful raisin. And so if you haven't done it yet, like this is something you really have to experience it. My description doesn't do it justice at all. But so just if you haven't, or if this is the first time you're hearing about it, after service today, Google mindful eating exercise raisin, and it'll bring up a couple different people's representation of it. But the reason I'm referencing it again is because once you do it, then you can learn how to apply it to anything. Just like, even I love just in meditation, sitting in my room and finding something, maybe it's the vent on the ceiling, something that I haven't like looked at. just clearing your mind as if like you just dropped in from the planet Mars and you have zero idea what anything is, and just looking at something that normally wouldn't grab your attention and just let yourself take it in. Right now, I'm looking at a key on my keyboard. I hadn't done that, and I can see how it raises. It's just opening up with a fresh mind is this powerful tool. So the mindful experiencing of it all. When I say stop and smell the roses, it's to really stop and just look and take it in. Like look closely, like where the petals connect, where that little leaf that was there before when it was just a bud, where it's still hanging there. Just leaning in with just a vast open mind. Now, where this leads us is as we practice that more and more, we can start to apply this in more challenging situations. Human beings can be maybe one of the most challenging situations that are, opportunities for growth is through human beings. When we interact with others and in this world right now, Reverend Jackie last week had so many different things that I took away from her talk. And when she talks about like this shift in consciousness that's happening, part of that shift is we have to do our spiritual work. We have to grow. We have to learn about ourselves. And that all starts with the individual. And at that same time, as we look at the macro of learning about itself in this world, and really, here in the United States, we see it very big, this growing, or not necessarily growing, but a very powerful divide of, we're having a hard time settling our different ideas of how to make this world work for everyone. And COVID has really stirred up a lot of emotion as well, to where we're seeing, like physical altercations, yelling matches out in public of people that, have different takes on what we should be doing right now. And it's really easy to get caught up in it. Like the keyboard warrior sitting at home, tweeting or be on Facebook or whatever. It's easy to send that vitriol out and to receive it and get triggered and activated. So what I want to talk about is the idea of curiosity as that superpower. Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown. She's a social worker and just so much wisdom that comes out of her. One of the things that she says is it's hard to hate up close. When you get close with somebody right in their face, it's hard to hate. And so what she says is, so lean in. And us, like Reverend Jackie talked last week on this shift in consciousness, just the fact that you're here right now, that each of us are here right now, means that we are opening up to ourselves, to our deeper nature, to that thing, whatever, like the song, call it Jesus, call it Buddha, call it spirit, whatever you call it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't care what we call it. It just appreciates that we are beginning to appreciate, I say it, which is, it's that whole dichotomy, it, us, it's the same thing. And there really is no us, it's just one. But leaning into that is our superpower and our strength. So as we see, places of resistance, people that we bump into, that their jagged edges connect with our jagged edges, as being a spiritual seeker, we have power to be open, to be curious. Now, one, yes, you can be curious and ask questions about people that you are having dialogue with, but in other instances, when you're just out in the world and just bumping into somebody, and it's not one where you're going to necessarily engage in that dialogue, we can take curiosity as the superpower and combine it with imagination and put it together. And through this, we create shift within ourselves. So now bear with me for just a minute, because this might sound a little preachy when I hear myself thinking it. And as I work on this talk, I'm like, and this happens a lot of times with me, I'm like, it sounds kind of preachy. So bear with me. Like, this gets to a place to where this is a gift for each of us. And really, whenever I create a talk, the ideas, the inspiration that want to come through me, it's always, to me, it's always something that I'm working on. So I'm really just sitting here talking to myself. And again, back to the oneness, I am literally sitting here talking to myself in all these different forms that the one I shows up as. But so I'm going to tell a couple of stories to get this idea of curiosity with imagination as like a supercharged superpower. So first, the story of Grumpy Man. I've spent a lot of my adult life waiting tables, which has been just a wonderful opportunity for spiritual growth, for awakening, all kinds of things. So now the story of Grumpy Man came along probably about a year and a half after I really started diving into spiritual practice. This is probably back about 2010. It was 2009, 2008. It was 2008 when I left my old lifestyle behind that I knew I had to, my old party ways I knew I couldn't go on. And it was after about a year when I found I needed something. And so I got into meditation, Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle. This is when I found Centers for Spiritual Living and started taking classes and learning how to witness my thoughts. And I, had so many aha moments in that first year and a half of formal practice that I kind of felt like I plateaued. And what happens is you get arrogant. I got arrogant. And like as a waiter, waiting tables, I was like, nobody can shake me. I am unshakable. Spirit has worked through me. This is fantastic. Well, the universe sees that and hears that and says, oh yeah, really? You think you are? Sit back. Here you go. Grumpy Man. Grumpy Man shows up in my section. And when I say grumpy, like that is the biggest understatement. I have never before. This guy took my worst customer before that and multiplied it by 10. He said horrible things to me about an egg is where this like really all started. And I had to like do my best. And it was my mission to like, it doesn't matter what somebody throws at me. I am going to come from my heart and I'm going to do my best to figure out what exactly they want or need and fulfill that to the best of my ability within my position here. He tried everything. Like called me like horrible names. He like yelled, he like, just get away from me, shushed me. My manager, who normally would come and help in these situations, told me she wouldn't. She's like, no way, man, I'm not going over there. She left me out to dry. I got through it. And I definitely attribute that to the Science of Mind teachings and perception and how I respond. But it was a serious challenge. Okay, so that is one thing. Now, move forward, I think it was like the next day, maybe 2 days at the most, I had the story of Sad Man. And I'm waiting tables again. And here's this guy, and he's just kind of quiet. And he comes in, he's eating some breakfast. And it just seemed a little down. So at one point, I just asked him, like, hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? And he's like, all right, you asked. I'm here because we were close to a hospital. He's like, I'm here just getting some breakfast because I've been staying at the hospital because my wife's dying. It's like, and he shared this with me and I, didn't know what to say necessarily other than, I feel for you. Can we put your breakfast on the house? Like that's about as much as I was able to do for this person. And, he was very pleasant. And he, apologized for being sad. And I'm like, no, it's okay, of course. But then as I walked off, I had this sometime in that next half hour, I had this aha moment, something like a light switch, and Grumpy Man came back into my head. And I had the realization that I had no idea what Grumpy Man's story was. But if Sad Man had acted towards me and treated me the way that Grumpy Man did, and I haven't been doing my work and I react and I, send that same hatred back at him. And then I find out that he's only there because he's getting a short break away from his, losing his significant other in the hospital. I would feel awful that I responded to that. Now, it doesn't mean that behavior, to treat somebody with that kind of hatred, is okay. It's not. But I can cut them a little slack. If I know that like that's the case, we can cut a little slack. And Lord knows I have many moments in my life where, thank goodness, people cut me slack. So applying imagination with curiosity, when we come up against these situations in our life, if we can tell ourselves a story that says, I don't know what's going on in their life. Maybe they're losing a significant other right now. Maybe they just lost their job. Who knows? But I want to give the benefit of the doubt, because I don't want to be that one that reacted in that same vehemence to somebody who's already going through enough right now. I don't want to be that one. I want to just know that I showed up in the best way that I could. So, I mean, that as it sounds preachy, and it even sounds like, we're giving some sort of thing to them, we're not. This is a gift ultimately to ourselves. This is right in alignment with the idea that when we forgive somebody, this is a very science of mind, new thought thing. When we forgive somebody, it's not for them. We forgive them for ourselves. Because when we hold resentments, when we allow somebody to trigger us and activate us, and we replay it in our heads, we drive home, oh, I should have said this. Then we get home and we talk to talk to a friend on the phone, and then he said this, and I wish I would have said this. And we keep like reliving it, depending on, the hurt we carried around as baggage everywhere we go, and that's heavy. So we have this gift to ourselves to lean in, to free ourselves, use our imagination in order to cut some slack to those in the world. And that's our superpower to move into this state where we are creating a world that works for everyone. The best thing that we can do is hold our vibration. So many teachers teach us this, like the only people that we have, or even like situations really that we have absolute control over, is ourself. And moving forward into this world that works for everyone, and really believing that we have the power to do that, we have to hold ourselves in that highest vibration. We can't get pulled down into those things. And it's hard, because when somebody triggers us, we have society's culturalizations that say, like, you're going to let them, somebody by us, you're going to let them talk to you that way? You can't do that. You have to let them know. You have to give it back. That's the old ways of being that we are, and thinking that we are seeing die out on this planet. As we move into a new shift in consciousness, we're rising above the old ways that were all about the me, that were about the protecting me. And the really interesting thing is, like I say, it's not about the me. And at the same time, it is about the me. Because when we do what is ultimately, like if we could tap into our soul purpose, into what the universe wants for us, if we do what is ultimately best for ourselves, the highest best, that is hands down what is the best for the all. So it's a really a good kind of selfish. One more quote from Ernest Holmes is, I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have them repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. It's our job to do the learning that we're doing, but then to show up in the world in this way, that this is how this new consciousness is evolving right now. It's unfolding across this world, and we see it. One last reference to Jackie from last week. She used the analogy of the butterfly coming out of the chrysalis. And it's a very, common analogy about how, we have to let it do it for itself. We can't do it for it, because if you interrupt the process and try to peel the chrysalis away, it doesn't strengthen its wings in the way that it needed to, that goes through that process. But Jackie included one thing that I had never heard before. And it was so wise, that she said, but we can help it by kind of sheltering it, keeping predators away while it's in this process of coming out of its chrysalis, block it from the light or from the wind. We can help by just being present. So as this consciousness on this earth is birthing, and all the things that we need to heal are coming to the surface, because we can't heal it until we see it and feel it. And so it's causing, major challenges. And we're going to continue to see this until we can get past it and realize like we don't necessarily have to go through it that way. But I know, from personal experience, my breakthroughs, they've usually come through after a little bit of a challenge or a pain. It's just kind of human nature. Being comfortable doesn't breed growth. If you're very comfortable, why change that? And so this is all happening. So us as being seekers, anybody that's hearing this right now, you are part of this. As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. We are that. And so this is our time to keep our vibrations high, to shelter and protect society as this emerging butterfly by just simply by holding our presence, showing up in a bigger way. Brene Brown is encouraging us to do this. She studies vulnerability and courage. And she says, choosing to be curious is choosing to be vulnerable because it requires us to surrender to uncertainty. It wasn't always a choice. We were born curious. But over time, we learned that curiosity, like vulnerability, can lead to hurt. And so this is where the idea of radical spirituality, again, thank you, Jackie. Radical spirituality is where we need to come in. It goes against everything that we have been taught, everything that we have trained ourselves in order to protect us, so that our ego doesn't get hurt, so that our identity doesn't get bruised. We have to get over that idea that it can lead to hurt. It will, as we do our spiritual work, as we open ourselves to hold that presence for others, we will get hurt. People will say things to us that trigger us. But we do it anyway, because we feel in our hearts, when we connect to that one power, when we connect to that one thing, or just acknowledge that it's within us, to become aware of that one thing, that is how we overcome that fear of being hurt. We just know what it is ours to do. And Bob talked in the meditation about thoughts are temporary, our awareness is permanent. And we can change a thought anytime in the stop of a dime. So when we find ourselves triggered and challenged by somebody out in the world, becoming curious, opening up with that mindfulness, that beginner's mind of what could be going on in this person's life. There's a book that leads us to, instead of saying, what is wrong with them? We say, what happened to them? Hurt people who have been hurt others until they realize that that's going on. And so when somebody is lashing out, acting in a way that we find very abrasive or angry or hostile, what has happened in that person's life that has led to this? We see the same thing with people in prison, violent criminals. Almost all of them experienced abuse and trauma in their life. So moving into a state of radical spirituality is about opening up to curiosity, understanding that we don't see the whole picture. So erring on the side of compassion and forgiveness, protecting this emerging butterfly. This is our strength and our gift to the world. And we want to see the shift on the consciousness, the collective consciousness. We are the front runners of that. We know that we are all representations of that one spirit. And when we think about God and we say things like God is love, or love is God, whatever you want to call that thing, when we say that and we like, what kind of qualities does this thing have? If we think that this thing is patient and loving and kind and forgiving, well, we are a representation, physical manifestation of that thing to express through it. So however we show up, ultimately, that is us demonstrating what we really think God is. So if we think that God is this bigger thing, we have to represent that as we are, or we're not really believing that we are that. So we are the shift. Thank you, everybody, for being here, for taking this time, for going within and looking at yourself and being open-minded and curious about yourself, because that is ultimately the best way to be part of this new way on this planet.